Assalamu alaikum and hello, Jai Bhim. Thank you everyone for joining this third part in the series of Prisoners of Haqq of the Indian regime. We are the Save India team from Justice for All. Justice for All is a human rights organization that is based in Chicago, Illinois, and we work on several projects. Many of you might know our project Burma Task Force, which has been running for many years now. But we also have projects on Kashmir, on the Uyghur situation in China, and we have a project on India, Save India from Fascism. My name is Zahir Adil. This afternoon, we are highlighting Father Stan Swamy and his work, and we are trying to build on his legacy. And for that, we have some very, very honored guests with us that I'm sure that you will enjoy listening to. But this is not a webinar of convenience. It is not a webinar, a feel-good webinar, as someone in a previous session had commented. This is a webinar that's actually going to ask you to do a few things. Prisoner of Haqq, prisoner of conscience. These people should not be prisoners. And it is you who might be able to help free those prisoners. And so stay with us and learn and find out, what can you do? What can you do collectively in your community, locally, right here in the United States or Canada, that might actually get freedom for some of the prisoners who are still in prison? Father Stan Swamy was released from prison only by inevitable death. But that death, the way that he suffered at the hands of the Indians, should not have happened. So he is, and he will be remembered as a prisoner of Haqq at Justice for All. I'm going to hand you over to Hina Zubairi, our projects director in Washington, D.C., and she will be your host this afternoon. Hina?
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's my utmost pleasure to moderate this program, not because, as you said, Brother here, that we need yet another webinar on these topics, but really because we need to bear testimony. We need to bear testimony now and for generations on in what is happening in the largest democracy in the world. To minorities, to people who are standing up for justice. Today's program is dedicated to Father Stan Swamy. Many of us have been mourning his death. I've never met him, but he's an inspiration. At 83 years old, I mean, he's at least maybe 10 years older than my father, and to imagine someone of his age suffering in prison, not being able to drink water properly, and being transferred at the very last minute to a hospital for a crime that he never committed. And this is what we're going to learn today. More details about his case, more details about what he went through. So just a little brief overview. On October 8th, Father Stan Swamy, an 83-year-old Catholic Jesuit priest, was born on the 26th of April, 1937, was arrested by the Indian National Investigation Agency. He was arrested on false charges of sedition and links to Maoist in relations to caste-based violence that occurred in Bhima Koregaon village in the western state of Maharashtra in December of 2018. Father Swamy, as we'll learn more in detail from our respected speakers, was known for his advocacy of Aboriginal tribes of India, particularly the Adivasis tribe. He has worked tirelessly for over 3 decades to uplift and empower tribal and ethnic groups, as well as Dalits. He's been pressing the state for the implementation of a tribal advisory council comprising for the welfare of members of the Adivasi community, as is sanctioned in the constitution. And he moved the High Court seeking the release of 3,000 young men and women who have been languishing in prison for being branded as Maoist. Now imagine, he himself was an advocate for these prisoners of conscience. And as Americans, one thing that really, really troubles me is that the United States has not recognized any of these people as prisoners of conscience. There are many, many Chinese, Nigerian, Pakistani, we have Sudani, Vietnamese, many other prisoners of conscience. But when you look at our Human Rights Commission and you look at USCIRF, at the United States Commission for International Religious Freedom, there are no prisoners listed. And Father Swami was the very first one listed. This was, when we sent in his details, it was very, very heartbreaking for us to see when you go on their websites and you click and look for them, search for them, and you're like, what is going on here? And that is our mission, is to change that. So these 3,000 young men and women languishing in prison, the thousands of Muslim prisoners languishing in prison, Christian prisoners, we need to highlight the names, let people know who they are. And that is Father Stan's legacy. There's so much more that I can say about him, but I think people who knew him well, who worked with him side by side, are much more better equipped to speak about that. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Father Cedric. And Father Cedric and I have had many conversations about Father Stan and his work and his legacy and everything that he's done. But we want to hear directly from Father Cedric. Father Cedric Prakash is a Jesuit priest in the Gujarat province in the northwest of India. He's part of the Society of Jesus. His core competency is in human rights. In October 2001, he founded the Prashant, the Ahmedabad-based Jesuit Center for Human Rights and Peace, and was its director until January 2016. Father Cedric has an international record of speaking up for human rights across the globe. He's worked in Lebanon. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Father Cedric to tell us more about Father Stan and his work, but particularly about his imprisonment, what he suffered through on the hands of the Indian regime, how the Indian government treated him while he was in prison, Father Cedric.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Zaid. Thank you, Justice for All, and very particularly the Save India campaign, the program that you have launched. And thank you for focusing on the life and legacy of Father Stan Swami today. Yeah, Hannah has already given you a brief overview of the life of Father Stan, what he has done, and what he has achieved. I need to make the short presentation into two interrelated dimensions. First, I will speak about what Father Stan meant to me. I first met him about 40 plus years when I was but a student, in the university in Bombay. And he was still a young priest at that time at the Indian Social Institute. Later on, he became director. And over the years, Father Stan has epitomized for me and for hundreds and thousands of others, 7 C's, all work beginning with the letter C. The first is, he has been a man of compassion. He had a heart which reached out to the poorest of the poor, the marginalized, the vulnerable, the excluded, and the exploited. And this compassion radiated all the time, all his life, whether he was a trainer at the Indian Social Institute or later on when he pitched his tent in Jharkhand. He was a man of great compassion. He was a great companion. The Jesuits, we use the word companion. We are companions of Jesus, Jesuits. But he used the word companion in a very different sense. And he loved to call people comrade. Very often when I met him, he addressed me as a comrade. He loved to use that word because he believed that as a person who's there in the midst of the people, who has compassion for the people, he had to accompany them. And he accompanied the Adivasis in their quest, in a relentless search for justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity, for the dignity that they rightly deserved. Stan, over the years, also believed in one thing. He believed in the gospel of Jesus. He was a Jesuit. But for him, a sacred book was the Constitution of India. This constitution, which he literally swore by, it was precious to him. He believed, and whenever he spoke, he referred to the preamble. He spoke about the Constitution of India. If you wanted somebody who epitomized patriotism, it was Stan Swami. So it was the Constitution of India that he was able to speak to people in an idiom in which they understood, in an idiom which was their right. We are speaking about Haqq, conscience. Haqq is also truth. Haqq is also right. But we are speaking about the prisoners of Haqq. And I think he was a man with great conscience, and he tried to conscientize others, the powerful, those who exploited the poor, the vested interests, those who took away the Jal, Jungle, and Jameen from the Adivasis. He tried to conscientize them. He also conscientized the Adivasis about their rights, about things like Pesa, about issues like the Patalgadi, about having a tribal advisory council, that these resources are legitimately theirs and no one can just take them away from them. He was a great man of collaboration. He realized he couldn't do things alone, but so over the years, he built networks. He collaborated with all men and women of goodwill. And he believed that a system can be changed only if you network and collaborated with others. And this he showed. The way he worked with a woman called Sudha Bharadwaj, who's still there languishing in jail, imprisoned a little before his father Stan Swami, to fight for the prisoners, the 3,000 young Adivasis whom Henna referred to just now. Stan epitomized courage. He feared no one. Right before he was incarcerated on the 8th of October 2020, he sent out video recordings. He said, I'm not afraid. If this is happening to me, realize, it's happening to many others. It's happening to people who are intellectuals, who are academics, who are poets, who are fighting for the rights of others. But ultimately, Stan was a man of commitment. He demonstrated unflinching commitment till the very end. For him, it was never say die. And even as late as the 21st of May, he was able to tell the judge, I'm going to die. Send me back to Ranchi. Send me back to Jharkhand, where I can be in the midst of my people. Or allow me to be in Taloja with the other prisoners with whom I found a new home. So these are the 7 C's: compassion, companionship, the Constitution, conscience, collaboration, courage, and commitment. On the 8th of October, as I already said earlier, and it was referred to by Henna, he was called for an interrogation. After several weeks and months of interrogation and investigation, a new book has just come out yesterday by the PUDR. Another memoir was released on the 3rd of August, about what he was saying and the way he lived his life. And for more than a year, he went through any amount of investigation and interrogation. They did not find a shred of evidence. Finally, they attached all his property. And it was like a joke in the papers the next day when the local papers in Ranchi had the NIA and the police attaching his property. They could find practically nothing. He lived such a frugal, simple life. And that was Stan. And it continued on the 7th of October. On the 8th of October evening, he was called and there at the police station. And then they immediately declared that he was going to be arrested. He had taken nothing. He just went there, perhaps by an auto rickshaw, meaning to go back home to have his dinner. They kept him. He called his companion. They brought him his little jola with a few things like his sipper cup, because he had Parkinson. His hands were constantly trembling. And the next morning, they flew him out to Bombay and they lodged him in the Taloja jail. From that day, almost till the end of May, he was there in the jail. This was a man. He completed actually his 84 year. He was arrested when he was 83 years old. He had his 84th 4-year-old birthday while he was in jail. And he had physical illnesses. He could hardly see. He had a hearing deficiency. He had Parkinson's. He had other physical infirmities. And yet they were not able to give him a sip of straw. They were not able to give him access even to regular phone calls. He was able to call his lawyer sometimes and to one of our Jesuits, but that was very, very, very little, very marginal. Bail was applied for him at different times. And what happened each time he was denied? The National Investigation Agency, because it was a special court, was denying him bail. At least on medical grounds, he would have got it. Finally, we went to the Bombay High Court, where the judges were fairly objective, were fairly good. And in fact, in one of the conversations, they asked him, would you like to go to a private hospital, to a hospital of your choice? He said no. He didn't want to be treated with a privilege. He did not want to be treated differently from the other prisoners because he knew they were suffering and he suffered with them. You know, there was somebody who one of the prisoners had to give him a bath. They had to feed him. He had no access even maybe to a little books or documentation, which was sent to them. So for almost 8 months, he suffered, but much to his great reluctance, finally the court ordered that he had to go to a private hospital. He came to a private hospital, which was run by some Catholic sisters in Bandra and Bombay. He was extremely well looked after. But unfortunately, he came there, when they tested him, he had COVID. And he was quite serious, in fact. They did not give him the proper vaccination. They did not give him the proper Medicare. They did not have the necessary wherewithal to look after a patient like him in the Taloja jail. The sisters looked after him very well. He had some of the top doctors. The High Court increased he was still under custody. He was not given bail. We were still applying for medical bail. The hearing was supposed to come up on the 5th of July, but on the 5th of July, when our lawyers went to the court, only to tell the judges there that Father Stan had just expired on the 5th afternoon. His death saddened all of us. His death shocked all of us, but we clearly say that his death was an institutional murder. He died while in custody. He was not given bail. He was sick. He was the oldest prisoner in the country, or perhaps in the history of the country, definitely in presently, who was regarded as a terrorist. Stan, we believe, was a saint. There are hundreds and thousands of Adivasis who believe that he's a saint today. He gave his life. He had to pay the price, and he paid the price at great cost. So truly, today, he's a prisoner of conscience, a prisoner of Haqq, and we must do all we can in every possible way, I repeat, to ensure that his legacy is lived. We have begun a huge campaign on the 23rd of July here with several organizations in India, several committed citizens from across the board. It will continue till the 28th of August. And the key days are the Adivasi Din on the 9th of August, 15th of August is Independence Day, and we continue this till the 28th of August. A huge campaign because we want Father Stan to be pronounced not guilty, that the state has incarcerated, imprisoned him without a shred of evidence. He was illegally incarcerated and he was institutionally murdered. First, we want the repeal of the Sedition and UAPA. These are draconian laws which are anti-constitutional, anti-people of India. And above all, we want, and we are making a pledge on it, we want that people have to have the voice to dissent, to protest, and for human rights defenders to be protected in every possible way. May Father Stan Swami live in our hearts and in our lives today and always. Thank you very much. You're muted.
I hope you guys can hear. Oh, okay. Now you can hear me. Thank you so much, Father Cedric. And, as we talk a little bit more, and later we'll talk a little bit more about exactly what happened with his laptop and all the other things that that just made his case and all the other Bhima Koregaon arrestees' cases so strange, and so it makes us really wonder. So, with this whole Pegasus story that has come out, this surveillance of activists and journalists is something that we must all be concerned.
And also the families of the Bhima Koregaon. Many of the families were under surveillance in this Pegasus scam.
So inshallah, we'll talk about this as soon as, but I'd like to introduce our next speaker. And Vijay Puli is the founder and executive director of South Asian Dalit Adivasi Network in Canada. And he's, it's a nonprofit organization that works for addressing the descent-based caste discrimination system and inequalities amount that in the South Asian community. He has significant experience in working with marginalized communities such as Black, Indigenous, people of color, Dalits, Adivasi people with disabilities, women, and children in Canada. Prior to this, while in India, Vijay worked in a community development setting with international projects and had the opportunity to work for the upliftment of marginalized and oppressed communities such as Dalits, Adivasis, backward castes, people with disabilities, women, and children. So thank you, Vijay. We're really honored to have you here with us. Please go ahead. Let me just spotlight you now.
Thank you, Hannah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. Jai Bhim, everyone. First of all, I want to send our deep condolence and grief from Sadhan to family of 9-year-old Dalit girl who was recently allegedly raped, killed, and burned in New Delhi. It is a shame and inhuman act. So I don't have any words to how to express that. So thanks to Justice for All and other organizations for organizing this important event. I also thanks to Father Cedric for coming and giving this wonderful presentation today on Father Stan Swami. So yeah, he gave a lot of information. I don't have anything to say or add to that. My presentation or my talk is going to be mostly on from Dalit Adivasi perspective. Just I'm going to talk a little bit about that. My name is Vijay Puli. I am a founder and executive director of South Asian Dalit Adivasi Network in Canada. We have been working on descent-based discrimination in Canada, especially caste-based discrimination for last few years, especially for Dalit Adivasi and Bhujan issues, right? So, me and my other Southern members never thought that, we need to have Dalit or other Adivasi organization like this in West country, especially in Canada. So because we escaped from India, seeking good days and good future for us and our families, that's what many might be marginalized communities are migrating to other countries, right? Seeking good, good life for them, especially to escape, from this brutal has been in centuries in India. Our people have been going through that, right? So that's what, just that was my hope. Like when I was like me and my family, I came with my, my wife and my small kid. Like my kid was just 1 year old at the time, first kid. So we came to Canada and hoping that, there won't be any caste system, hooray, like, just, kind of jumping, right? But, once we landed in Canada and, we saw the caste system does not only exist in South Asia. It exists right here in Western countries under so many, blankets, right? So then we realized that no, we need to do something. Like, we need to expose this caste system. Like, otherwise, like, we need to face the same problem here too, right? So that's what, like, me and my other, Southern members decided to, form this Southern. Then since then we have been working on this, addressing the caste-based discrimination issues in Canada. Today, we are here talking about another case in the same subject, the subject of caste-based discrimination and atrocities happening in India, not only by the people and society, but also by the state itself openly. Father Stan Swami's case is, best example right here standing in front of us today. The brutality of the state with the Dalit and Adivasi Bahujans activists. We have been working for the poor and most marginalized community in India. Look at the Father Stan Swami life. So how he dedicated his life from childhood to upliftment of these communities. He lived with them, right? So he understood their problems. What is the, the Dalits, what are the, indigenous people, what problems they are having every day at the ground, in the ground, right? So, like he tried to educate them. He tried to, work for their rights, right? So, and he even like, he brought so many grassroots organizations and activists. He trained them. He exposed them what is exactly the problem in the ground road, right? So his object was very simple, like, gel, water, jungle, forest, and Jamin, land. These resources are historically belong to Adivasis and Dalits, right? So, like he fought against the state falsely accusing the Adivasis and charging them as a Maoist or Naxalite, whatever you call. Obviously, the dominant caste governments, administrations do not like always. That's what they name them. That's what they blame them. They put them in jail. That's what happening for a long time. But now it's gone, peak. That's what we are here talking about. Actually, this kind of imperialism and polarization by the dominant caste Hindus and the Dalit Adivasi is not new anymore. It has been historical since Vedic periods. At least I can say Vedic periods. We can see same kind of oppression on Dalits and Adivasi Bahujans. Look at those kings. I don't know how many people about this, the spiritual fascism, we call it, right? So it comes from the, the religious scriptures, the notions, Mahishasur, King Mahishasur, Ravan, other victims like Eklavya, Simbuka, and others who are victims of this Hindu polarization in the history. If you look at those histories closely and assess that critically, you know what exactly it is, promoting, right? So the same pattern returned back to the rise in Hindu nationalism since BJP government came into the power. We all are seeing how human rights activists are being attacked, jailed by not only the government, but also Hindu nationalist right-wing groups. Even we are seeing these Hindu right-wing groups killing the activists. We can see, how many activists have been killed, lynched by these groups. We are seeing every day still. They are dominant. These are like, just we can say like, who are these all? Are they Dalit? Are they Adivasis? Are they Bahusians? No, these all are just dominant caste people who consist, just like 15-20% of Indian population. 80% population, just they are keeping quiet or they are in this fold still. Only 15% are like, the 20% dominant caste people who are ruling this country for a long time. They are the one ruling these all people. They are the one doing this all. We have like 80%, they are dumb people. They don't have any like, anybody, any like one of people are, activists like who have guts to fight like this. They are being put in jail like this. We have many activists, including, 16 Bhim Corrigan case to Muslim journalists who exposed brutal, Hathras case, where a Dalit girl was raped and body was burned publicly by the police without the parents' consent. We can see like how, that Muslim journalist still is in jail right now today. That's what they are doing. They don't want, any Dalit or Adivasi or any marginalized Muslim, any marginalized to talk about, what is happening in the country. That is happening, polarization happening for a while. Especially since, BJP, the Hindu nationalist government came into the power. So, like people may be wondering, like what is this Bhima Gorigan or, what is this, fuss about, right? So just I want to give a little bit, brief idea what about, Bhima Gorigan, what is a Bhima Gorigan, right? Bhima Gorigan was a celebration, like it was done in 2018 by the Dalit organizations where the dominant caste groups joined and pelted and created violence with the casteist mindset, where one Dalit and, other Dalits were injured. So later, that the Hindutva government falsely accused 16 human rights activists, alleging that they were the reason for instigating this violence, and they arrested them. Father Swami was one of them, right? So this is how exactly polarization happens, by false aggregations, cracking down dissent, and using anti-terrorism laws. They were created during the British period. Just I don't understand still like why still Indian government needs to carry on these laws. They were created during the British period to, oppress, to, put down these all, the freedom fighters. So once the, India got the freedom, why did not they just, scrap that law? Because they want to use it. They want to use that to oppress these Dalit and Adivasis communities, right? That is what polarization means. We have the, freedom from the British, white Britishers, but not from the Aryan casteist fundamentalists. That's what is happening right now. I say Aryan casteist fundamentalists. Just you guys can, if you want to know about what is that, just go and, search a little bit information about that. To oppose these all injustices, we have been organizing many protests, like we means Sadhan, in Canada for last few years. We have organized a protest in front of the Indian consulate on July 15th against the Indian state's brutality in killing Father Stan Swami in the jail and imprisoning all other activists too. This is a time we all, marginalized communities, like, all like Muslims, Dalit and Adivasis, Sikhs, like farmers recently, right? What happened to the farmers? The government still does not listen to them. They have been there for months on the, on the roads. They are protesting for their rights as farmer rights, but the government does not care. Even they are, like they are doing the lathi charge and they're putting them in the jail, like, like how, what they are doing, like we can witness that directly what is happening, right? So this is the time we all need to come on the same page and, bring down this fascist regime. I want to mention, our great leader, Dr. Ambedkar's quote here, because I think that is a right time and, right place to do that. It is our climb to equality, which hurts them. They want to maintain the status quo. If you continue to accept your lowly status ungrudgingly, continue to remain dirty, filthy, backward, ignorant, poor, and disunited, they will allow you to live in peace. The moment you start to raise your level, the conflict stops. Frankly, it can be said that the struggle between the Hindus and untouchables is a never-ending conflict. It is eternal because the religion would assign you the lowest status in the society is itself divine and eternal according to the belief of the so-called high caste Hindus. So that is exactly we have like Dalit and Adivasi has been facing for a long time, right? So, but now after Hindu nationalist government came into the power, it's open. They are doing openly to us. That is the only, the difference between. So this is a time we all need to come down, say on the same page, and we need to really we need to come as a one strength to fight back. Just, I want to share our organization's activities, what we did it. Just as brief.
Okay, thank you so much, Vijay. And I'm.
Can you see this? Sorry,
Yeah, sure, go ahead. I just wanted to keep it focused on Father Stan, but definitely go ahead and go.
Sure, no problem then. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Perhaps when we do the Q&A on what
sure,
we do
definitely,
next,
yeah.
then
Yes.
you can bring this up if you
Sure,
don't mind.
definitely. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to really highlight and talk about is what had happened in the Bhima Koregaon case. Like, why were these specific people targeted? And the fact that Father Stan had never even been to the location. So Father Cedric, if you could share a little bit more about that, I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah. Bhima Koregaon and the uprising there goes back to over 200 years. And on the 31st of December 2017, there was a big meeting, mainly of Dalits, there in a place just outside in the suburbs of Pune called Elgar. It was called the Elgar Parishad. There were lawyers, there were human rights defenders, there were judges, retired judges, and several eminent citizens who had gathered together. And the next day, on the 1st of January 2018, was the 200th anniversary of this Bhima Koregaon, where every year thousands of people, mainly Dalits, gather to celebrate an uprising that, in a way, defeated those who are powerful and the other vested interests of that time. It is an annual gathering. Now, what happened at that time on the 1st of January 2018? There was violence. People were injured, some vehicles were burned, and apparently 1 or 2 were killed. I'm not sure of that number. And the police stepped in, and immediately they, in the FIR, the names of those who belonged to the Sangh Parivar, to the Hindutva groups, including the BJP, were named. This was already in the early days of January. And then everything was quiet and so on. A little later, beginning in June, that FIR was changed, and several human rights defenders, those who were working for the rights of the Dalits, of the Adivasis, the exploited and excluded in different parts of the country, were named. Investigations began on them, and beginning, the middle of June, because we had a date to mark it, because it's already 3 years now, they started getting arrested right up till the 28th of August 2018. Now, among those who were arrested was a woman called Sudha Bharadwaj. She belongs to a family of freedom fighters. and that people do not know. She's a lawyer who has given her life for the sake of the tribals and the Dalits in the Chhattisgarh area. There are people like Anand Teldumde, a great, again, scholar, a Dalit leader, and who was there in the Goa Institute of Management. There are people like Arun Ferreira. Um, Both of us have come from the same college in Bombay, St. Xavier's College. He was, of course, much junior to me, and his uncle is a bishop in Bombay. Another uncle is a Jesuit. He comes from a deeply religious Christian Catholic family, but he has given, he's high up there intellectually, a great academic and so on, but he has espoused the cause of the Adivasis and the poor and the marginalized. There is a man like Vernon Gonsalves. His wife is a lawyer. Vernon Gonsalves and I happen to come from the same school in Baikala. He was again much junior to me, but he was a professor in the college. There were people like Gautam Navlaka. There was a great Telugu poet, Baravara Rao, and so on. Rona Wilson. There are three from a drama group called the Kabir Kala Manch, based out of Pune, who are doing street plays, excellent. All these people had one thing in common. They swore by the Constitution of India. They loved the Constitution of India. They loved the people of India. They were committed to the rights and freedoms of every single person. So 15 of them, over a span of time, Father Stan was interrogated, and he was the 16th. We still call them the BK16, the 16 who have been incarcerated in the Bhima Koregaon conspiracy case. Now, what has been shown that they have a little kind like an overused record, that these were people who are plotting to overthrow the government. They were the people who are going to resort to violence. There is not a shred of evidence. In fact, Arsenal Consulting, a top-notch IT firm out of the United States, had proved with hard evidence that the computer of Rona Wilson has been doctored. They have planted, fake messages and fake mails onto his computer, because they have taken away Father Stan's computer too. He did have a computer. And right from the beginning, he was saying, I have not been in touch with anybody. I've never been to Bhima Koregaon. I've never been to any Elkar Parishad. Maybe some of my friends have been there. So now in the new amendment in the UAPA, just by remote connection, you can also be arrested without getting bail. But now, alleging that these people were, and many of them were not at the Elgar Parishad, they were nowhere near the violence. Some of them might have been there, but they did not take part in any violence. But these are all fabricated cases. Nothing has been proved, and there is hard evidence to show how the state can plant messages into your electronic appliance, and has been proved by top-notch IT firms, and now we have the Pegasus spyware to show how the government has been snooping on human rights offenders, on journalists, on those who have taken a stand, on the families of Bhima Koregaon, on a young lady and a family who charged a former Chief Justice of India of sexual harassment, and a lot of her family, are there. All the names have been coming out. And these are serious things. This cannot be happening in any democracy in the world, especially of a democracy that claims to be the biggest democracy in the world. This is a shame. We should hang our heads down in shame. And I believe in the Constitution of India. I'm saying this because I love my country, and I pledge and swear by the preamble and on every right and freedom guaranteed to every single citizen of the country. What is taking place is not merely shocking, is not merely sad, but It is absolutely shameful.
Thank you for that. And before I go back to Vijay, who's going to share with us what people in Canada can do to continue the legacy and work of Father Stan and what he stood for. Father Cedric, if you could share with us what you believe people internationally can be doing to make sure that his legacy doesn't lie out and the people that he stood for and the prisoners, other prisoners that are still languishing in jail, what can we do?
Yeah, I'm convinced that human rights, we are a signatory to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 10 December 1948. We have a great constitution, which was kind of finalized on the 26th of November 1949, and it was promulgated on the 26th of January 1950, when we became a republic. And a lot of the Constitution of India, the preamble and the rights and so on, is definitely based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I have all of it here. And I think whenever there is the rights of anybody, anywhere in the world that are affected, that are denied, the voice of anyone, anywhere in the world needs to be expressed loud and clear. So those of you in the United States, take a stand. I'm not being unpatriotic, because if we can do trade, if we can sell to each other arms and ammunition, if we can use taxpayers' money and pay another foreign country, I'm sure human rights defenders from across the globe can speak about human rights in any part of the globe that is taking place. These are not sacrosanct, and I'm not spoiling. The people who are spoiling the name of India are those who are denying the Indians their legitimate human rights, who are denying the Adivasis, who are denying the Dalits, who are denying, the migrant workers, that little girl that has been raped the other day. And who's responsible for this? Vijay has just referred to that. It's a shame, okay? When we can say that all us Olympians, including our gold medalists, had to go to Europe to get trained so that we can get our first gold medal in athletics today. And we are so proud of it. It's a great honor for the country, but he took training abroad, and that's legitimate, okay? He's a man who has voiced a protest against the 3 anti-farmer laws. And even the other bronze medalist today, the wrestler, has also voiced a protest there. These are icons, are sportsmen who have spoken about what is happening in the country. So any human rights being violated anywhere, any injustice anywhere to any people, and if we do not speak about these injustices, I think we will be doing a serious, it's a sin. I would, if I use, the language of a priest, it's wrong. We have to voice our protest, our dissent about human rights violations, about injustices anywhere, and stand up for prisoners of conscience like Father Stan Swami. I'm very clear. You have to voice, speak to your congressmen, speak to your senators, ask your government. You have a lot. And actually, the US State Department actually tweeted. Check the tweet of the Department of Religion in the US State Department. They were concerned about about the death of Father Stan Swami. Mary Lawler has spoken about it. The UN Human Rights Commission has spoken about it. Several governments and parliamentarians from across the world have spoken against the death of Father Stan Swami. And it is all there on record. I am not exaggerating anything.
Thank you, Father Stan, for that.
Yeah,
Father,
I'm also
I keep
called
calling.
Father
I'm
Stan.
sorry. It's just our hearts are with him, and it comes up in the
Yes.
mouth. Sorry.
And I'm not worthy to be called Father Stan, but it's also an honor.
Yes, yeah, my mouth keeps bringing up his name because he is in our hearts. Thank you so much. Vijay, I'm going to ask you to come on. If you could share
Sure.
with us what people in Canada can do. I know your organization has been doing excellent work. So
Yeah,
if you could
sure.
share with us.
Sure. Thank you, Sister Hema. Sorry, Hena. As Father Cedric mentioned that, uh, I have the same experience, not only like my all Dalit and other activists, even not from India, like from especially outsiders now, like because we are living in out of India, right? We have been, having the same kind of, the attacks by these Hindutva casteist people for a long time. Whenever, like, me and my other people just try to talk about these injustices and caste discriminations on Dalits and other minorities happening in India, same question, like what our father Cedric just mentioned. Why you are talking about our India? So why you need to talk about our country? Come on, I need to tell them we are the Dalit and Adivasi people. You know what does that mean? We are the native people. We never had any borders. That is our first principle for the native people anywhere in the world. Look at the anywhere in the world. First people, native people never had any borders. So wherever injustice happens, wherever it happens, we are the first one to step in and fight against that. It does not matter who are they. So that is our main principle for the First Nations of the country anywhere in the world. So I used to tell them, these are the same people, like who used to ask me the questions what you're talking about. They never spoke about single word about, when Dalit woman is raped, a Dalit is killed, for eating his beef food, or Muslim, is lynched or killed for eating his own food, beef. They never spoke about, they never say that single word about those incidents. But whenever we try to talk about that, these are the people just jump in and say that, why you guys are talking about this? Why you are blaming our country? Because they are so insecure, they are so scared that, that their government may fall down. Like we are bringing, these issues outside to the world on the, international platform, right? That's what they have been doing for a long time. So that's what, that is the one of the reason too, like we formed, Southern to work on these issues, not only in Canada, like, wherever it happening, right? In India, South Asia, like wherever this kind of things happen, like, we are working on that. This is the one of the, the activities recently we organized, especially for the, for the Stan Swami's institutional killing. We had a big protest with so many organizations came forward. We did, this protest in Canada in front of the Indian consulate office. So yeah, this is the one, like, we had other activities too, like we have been doing that. I'm not sure like it's relevant here or not, because we are here to talk about only, Father Stan Swami's legacy and his his story here. So just I want to say that, the organization came to, sorry. These are all our activities. I don't want to talk about them right now because it's not relevant. These are the organizations, like, we have been working closely with, and they are the part of this recent, protest in Canada. Anti-caste aliens of South Asian Diaspora, Dalit Lives Matter Canada, Canadian Council of Indian Muslims, Dr. Ambedkar International Mission, Sri Guru Ravidas Sabha Ontario, then Canadian Against Oppression and Persecution, International Socialist Organization, Canadian Jewish International, then Jehomor. And also we have close, tie-ups with Equality Labs in America, then Friends for International, Education International. They both are from America too. So yeah, like we are trying to build up, the platform all together, all our, like we have been victims of this, the right-wing 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 groups in India. So we are all like, we never thought about, coming like this, right? So, but we are forced to, we are being forced to come together to have, this network to, fight back. That's a very, positive and good thing. I can say that at least we started doing that in Canada.
So if people wanted to join, we'll put down some information on working towards this. So are you working at a government level in organizing about these prisoners, or any, so I understand protests are number one thing that you do. What else? What else? Because this is connected to his legacy. If he was working for the same people back in India, then, and you're working for it in Canada, so there's a direct connect. Could you share with us in what sort of activities can people get involved with you?
So we are working on, especially, writing a letter asking the Canadian government. Already we are in that process. We are drafting that. So we are going to send that letter to, Canadian government and, all the local political leaders who are representing the government. We are planning to bring the pressure to recognize, this what is happening in India, especially for Father Stan's, his legacy, his commitment towards the Dalit and Adivasi people, because nobody knows, right? So as I know, I used to talk many times, especially in Western countries, most of the people from India is, from dominant caste people. So, so recently, Equality Labs found that, some research found that most 80%, about 80% of South Asians from South Asian people who have been staying in North America.
Vijay, we lost your voice.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the people who are living in Western countries, most like about 80% are dominant caste people, because they came here from their privilege, right? Historical privilege. They have been, access to the resources, right? So wealth, resources, education, these are all, the background, sources for them to come here, right? So obviously, it's other reason is like they came here on the blood and sweat of these Dalit and Adivasi people. They have been working there. So that's what, it's the people who are here, the Dalit and Adivasis are very less. So that's what, we are trying to bring the education to the community and as well as the governments here. So what exactly happening in South Asia and diaspora in these countries, right? So that's what we are trying to write, the letter to the government, especially about, Father Stan's legacy and how he has been criminalized, falsely criminalized in India, and what is happening in India. That's what we are working on right now.
Okay, so to answer, and Sadia, I hope that answers your question. Her question was, what should advocacy groups in Canada, what steps should they take in order to pressure Canada to be vocal on issues of human rights violations against Muslim, Dalits, Christians, Adivasis, and other marginalized communities in India? Father Cedric and Mr. Vijay can answer. So for one step is being a part of this letter writing campaign to MPs. So hopefully Save India from Justice for All Canada can join in that campaign. So hopefully Sadia can connect with Brother Vijay, and we can get to work on that as well.
Sure, definitely. Yeah.
Stanley Fernandez has a question that he's asking. How long will these repressive laws which punish innocent civilians with gross injustice be allowed to be used to subdue vocal civilians and those who are considered threats to political parties in power? Will politicians in power who misuse these laws and cause deaths of innocents ever be punished for murder. So this is one reason why we believe it's very, very important to collect these testimonies of people who knew and bear witness to the work of Father Stan, because things cannot always remain the same. There has to be some change, and we have to have hope in God, and that the arc of justice will bend at some point. So I'd like to bring on Father Cedric at this point, if he could.
Yeah, definitely. There are repressive laws, and we have begun a whole campaign, as I said earlier. Several organizations, platform, the National Alliance of People Movements, hundreds and thousands of people are now together asking for an immediate repeal of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, the sedition laws, and all these draconian repressive laws, which are anti-constitutional, anti-people, and they're archaic. The British used it against a man like Lokmanya Tilak. It is there in the Bombay High Court. They charged him for sedition. He says, I want to say, if you want to make me suffer, let this be my last words. He was, in the court. He said, Swaraj is my birthright. And we are saying, Swaraj is our birthright. And these are what our freedom fighters have given us. So these repressive, draconian laws need to go. We have begun a whole campaign on the 23rd of July. It'll go until the 28th of August. There were lots of programs being held all over the country. And with one voice, we are saying, we have a right to dissent. We have a right to defend the rights of the poor and the marginalized. And we want these draconian, repressive, anti-people, anti-constitutional laws to go immediately. And they're being used. They're being used by the powerful. And you see, there is no evidence. And in terms of conviction, the conviction is just about 1 to 2% of those incarcerated for years. Recently, a doctor who had come to Baroda, for a cancer doctor who had come from Kashmir, was put under the UAPA. And finally, after some 2 or 3 years, they discovered that he had no case against them. An Adivasi young lady who had come to me from Jharkhand, had come to meet the Adivasi groups in Gujarat. They put her under the UAPA. And finally, she was speaking about Patalgadi and so on. She was not advocating against violence. She was wanting the Adivasis to come together. So anybody who questions the might of the state, who's talking against corruption, against how the forces keep us divided, or how the rich become richer, exploiting the poor who become poorer, these people are just incarcerated, without any bail. This is ridiculous. There are cases going on in court, but some of them are just lingering for years. And such anti-people legislation should need to go. But the point is, will our politicians want them to go? Because it also caters to their whims and fancies. A lot of the parties, even the parties which have brought it out, have come together and said, these legislation need to go. But just now they don't have the numbers either in the upper or the lower house of parliament. But there is the Supreme Court, and we are hoping that the Supreme Court will see the light and do away with these repressive laws. But they need to go.
I want to add to that, sir. I want to add to that. The main problem, we have been working, like you and me and Father, Cedric and Father Stan Swami, we have been working on this, right? So we are coming on the road and fighting against this. But what about, these political leaders who are in that party? Why they kept keeping quiet on these all, issues? So they know that what is happening. They know that their own people, their own community, for example, Dalit people from Dalit, the leaders who are in this fold, why they are not talking, that's a little bit concerning about, right? So for example, just to see few days back, that 9-year-old Dalit girl was brutally, raped, killed, burned. So how many Dalit leaders are talking? How many Dalit leaders are sitting in the parliament and in the political parties? how many, like might be one or two people are talking. What about all other people? Why they're not talking about their own people? That is the problem here. Like, some Muslim person is, lynched for eating his own food, birthright. Why the Muslim political leaders are not talking about that? So it's happening not only like in a mainstream community, it's happening within the political spectrum too, right? So there needs to be a lot of change need to come. Like then only like we can bring down these all laws. Otherwise, it's very difficult to. I don't know when it's going to happen. So there should be some movement needs to come from the general people. Then only these political leaders can move. Otherwise, they don't move.
Mhm. I'm going to open it for Tanushra. She has a question. So Tanushra, I'm going to please go ahead and ask your question. Tanushri, sorry. Tanushri, you had your hand up. Please unmute yourself so you can ask your question. We're not able to.
You're muted. Please unmute yourself.
Maybe sometimes the hand comes up by mistake.
Yeah, so maybe. So I'm at this point, I'm going to, we have about 3-4 minutes where if I'm going to open it up, if anybody else has any questions, please raise your hands and we'll take your questions at this point. Otherwise, if you don't feel like talking and you want to just type it in the Q&A, that would be also something that we can do.
Brother Jamal has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Brother Jamal.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. This is a question that I have raised with Hina and a couple of people at Justice for All several times before, and I'm sure they're a bit tired of hearing it. But as Father Cedric and Brother Vijay are new to this gathering, let me ask it again. I draw a lot of parallels, and I acknowledge right in the beginning that you're peaceful people. You're people of peace, and far more so than me. I personally draw a lot of parallels between the RSS government in India and the Nazi government in Germany. And the Nazi government in Germany did not perish because we raised our voice against them, or we made appeals to them, or we appealed to courts. People of conscience, or whatever the reason may be, they fought them. They defeated them in a war, and they tried them as war criminals. And that is how we put an end to them. In Islam, right-thinking Muslims believe that it is okay to fight to defend yourself. That's allowed. That's not a war. That's not a battle of aggression. Tell me, how long will this appeals and raising your voice in conscience and all that, how far will it go? I mean, look at what is happening to the farmers in India. They've been sitting there on those roads leading to Delhi now for more than, for how long? For 6-7 months?
8 months, 8 months.
8 months, Tell me, I think about 500 of them have died, Many hundreds have been jailed. The government does not even want to talk to them. Father Stan Swami's case, and may God rest him in peace. It's an example. They imprisoned him and they murdered him. Where is this going to end? Unless we actually forcibly remove these people from office and hold them to justice.
Yeah, I can say as per my knowledge, Brother Jamal, you're right. Yeah, it is about the imperialism, like the people who are ruling it, right? That's what I mentioned before. 80% of Indian population is from the Dalit Adivasi Bahujans. They are the the oppressed caste. But who are the all the time ruling parties, right? The 15% to 20%. That should be changed. Like whenever the Bahujan people come into the ruling, then only it is going to change. unless like we cannot expect it happen. Like, whenever you said that, like, Dalit Adivasi people, they have been fighting for a long time. Like that's what I mentioned, the Vedic period. Since Vedic period, our people, like, the Ravan, the King Ravan and Mahisasur, they are kings, Bhojan kings. They fought it. They fought against the Brahmanism. How they are killed. They're named as bad people. Since it's not new, it's happening for thousands of years. Still, our Dalit Adas people, that's what, like, they have been ending up in jails. As, like, Father Cedric previously said that one Adivasi girl came to meet him. She was arrested. She was put in the jail. So under that act, right? So they don't want any, like, you or me, anyone to talk against to this Brahminical, the rulings, the parties, right? So how it changes, definitely the government should be changed. The power should come to the, the Bhojan hands. Then only we can say that the plate is going to be changed. That's what we need to work on. As per my knowledge.
Yeah, Jamal Hassan, with all due respect to your question, I don't subscribe to any violence. I don't think violence is the solution anyway. I don't think that there is anything like a just war, okay? Because finally, the people who are killed in a war and so on will be millions of innocent people. So violence is not for me the solution. We need change, but change should come through the way Father Stan was doing, to conscientize people, to work, and then perhaps many more will have to pay the price. But I believe change will come. Okay, we will never have perhaps a paradise here on earth. We will never have a perfect system. There will be gray areas, there will be flaws, and so on. Every generation, but then we need to conscientize people. We need to educate people in this thing. I know I've worked in the slums, I've worked in the villages of Gujarat a lot, and I know how slum dwellers themselves, once they become a little powerful, they'll go and exploit their own people. I've seen people in the villages, whether it is Adivasis or Dalits, they go and exploit their own people the most. Okay, so the point is, and he referred maybe to I don't like to use label anyone with religion, but whether it's Muslims or Christians and so on, finally everyone is thinking about their own selfish agenda. Even politicians. So how do we transcend this? How do we try to create what politics was always actually about? I recommend to everyone to read this encyclical by Pope Francis, written with the Grand Imam, okay, there in Abu Dhabi, on Fratelli Tutti, that we are sisters and brothers. And look at what he says, that the importance of us all of us to be engaged in politics is very clear, and especially for Christians who think that some people think that politics is bad and so on. No, but politics is good. But how do we have maybe the possibility of recall? If there is corruption, but we have no problem in becoming part of a corrupt system. We will pay to get our things done. Okay, so we need a lot of internal and soul searching, and we need the courage to do all we can in a non-violent way to change the system.
Yeah, and other thing is, like, if we want to fight with the weapons, guns, if I have one gun, the government has 10 guns. How it's going to work? How it's going to work? Because they have the power, they have the money, they have the wealth, everything, right? So they have everything. So I don't know how can we defend with the weapon, right? So,
I don't care whether the government has guns. I'm saying I should not have a gun.
Exactly. So it should change through the political changes only.
The mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd urge everybody to listen to a beautiful, maybe it's a 20-minute speech by Abu Bakr Tambedu. He's the Gambian justice minister who now he's at the UN, but he took the Rohingya genociders to the International Criminal Court, and how he speaks about using the tools of today, the tools of justice to get back at perpetrators. There are ways that we can take people who are committing these atrocious acts and to use those mechanisms to hold them up to task. And so with that, and this is honestly, in my lifetime, this is the first time I'm seeing people organizing at an international level against these things, just like Vijay and Equality Labs and those people, because they're experiencing it here, right? They're experiencing Dalit discrimination right here. They tried to escape from it from India and they came here, but they're still experiencing it here in in communities, in tech companies, in education systems. So then where do there's no way to really escape from it. You could make a new system or make change even the political party, and then still it continues to happen. So I'd really encourage people to watch that, and how he discovered what tools from his Islamic teachings, what he discovered what justice means and how he can use the tools of justice in today's world to change the world as it is today. Yes, so I do believe we need to explore and use those routes and with God's help. I do believe God's help comes to those, in our tradition. Maryam alayhi salam, the Virgin Mary, she was asked to shake that palm tree. Now she had no strength. That palm tree could not be shaken. What would shaking that palm tree do for her by giving that virgin birth, right? But God Almighty asked her to shake that palm tree. And if we haven't even shaken that palm tree ourselves, how are we, going to fight? There's so many other ways of fighting against atrocities that we have not even explored yet. So from our end, I know we've begged to differ on this, Brother Jamal, several times, but thank you for your perspective. You're always ready to share it. And I think we are at, Brother Zahir, if you'd like to close this session out.
Sure, inshallah. Thank you, everybody. And I am sorry for not getting to all the questions, but we do connect with us, and we will be happy to answer any questions that you may have, or even tell you, really, and this is the goal of these webinars, invite you to be part of fighting against oppression, of fighting for the rights of prisoners of Haqq. I have shared a link in the chat, and it should have gone out to you. So please volunteer. We have everything ready for one prisoner of Haqq that we are doing, which we are highlighting at this time, and that's Brother Shabbir Shah in Kashmir. He has had so many charges brought against him, but each time a charge does not hold up in court, another charge is brought against him, and he has been languishing in prison for many, many years. So he is, in our minds, a prisoner of conscience, and we all need to collectively work so that we might be able to impress upon the Indian government that this is not the path that a democracy should be taking. Father Cedric, thank you so much for sharing the 7 C's of Father Stan. And I was writing them down, but I was also drawing parallels, because at Justice for All, we work with 3 C's. And those 3 C's are encompassed in the 7 C's that you mentioned. The 3 C's that we work with, that we base our strategy on, is care for our neighbors and for humanity. It is communications, being very, very clear with how we educate and how we ask for things. And that communication has always to be based on Haqq. And the third C that we base ourselves on is coalition building, because by ourselves we are very weak. But when we join hands with organizations such as SADA, with others, with the Equality Labs, with you over there in India and with other organizations, then we become strong. So thank you for sharing that. In closing, I will also, I need to also thank Brother Vijay. Thank you so much for being on with us. And inshallah, we really hope that you'll be able to connect with Justice for All Canada, and we have some collaboration between our two organizations, but at least our sister organization in Canada and Sadan in the Canadian space. I will mention one of the smallest chapters of the Quran, and usually we do end with that. But after I have spoken, I will request Father Cedric if he can come back on and do a non-denominational short prayer. So, but before that, let me just do the recitation and the translation of Surah Asr. Walas, Inna al-insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. Verily, by the passage of time, humanity is in a state of loss, except for those that stand together in truth and guide others and bring and work in constancy on good things. Father Cedric, please, if you can do a prayer.
God, our loving and compassionate Father, we thank you for bringing us together. Those who are here on the YouTube, those on Facebook Live, those on the Zoom, on the YouTube, and also on the MNTV. We ask you to continue to shower your blessings upon us, our families, and all that we do, and very especially on this great work that we do to highlight the prisoners of Haqq in different parts of the world. Be with us, guide us, and bless us today and always. Amen.